afternoon, good morning, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are back. I believe this is video 9. Thank you for staying with us and tuning in this far. So today, special guest, great friend of mine, and she is here today to talk about something in relation to the things that we talked about in the past few videos. So we talked about the resume, making sure that is ready and is precise, pristine. We talked about making sure your LinkedIn is a great representation of yourself. Now, we're going to hear from the Campbell's mouth, so to say, from the HR perspective. You have all of these good things. Now, what do you do with it? How do you get the job? And how do you maintain that whole process from start to finish? So I have with me today Miss Katrina Hicks. She's a great friend of mine. I've known her for a little while now, and I'm going to let her introduce herself to you guys, and then we'll get started.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you all. My name is Katrina Hicks, and I'm a really, really, really good friend of his. And I'm in the HR space. So I've been in the HR space, I want to say over 10 years, various different industries, whether it's commercial real estate or financial services, where I really got my start. And now I've switched gears into media and entertainment, always supporting the technology space, which we all know is the future, right? Up and coming, fast-paced environment. And my current role that I'm in today is I'm at DSS, which you guys would know as Disney Plus, which is hot and new and in everyone's homes at this moment. So as you guys know, we've been moving pretty fast, and I'm the senior HR business partner there. So super excited to be with you all today and hopefully, share some of my guidance that I've learned over the years, as well as some tips and tricks when you move on to that next step, which is beyond the resume, is what I like to call it.
Awesome. So thank you, Katrina. So we're going to go ahead and get started, and I'll jump right out there. So, okay, I have my great resume. I have a great LinkedIn. I look as best as I can do via web and via paper. What's next for me? How do I, transition from having all of this good stuff to making myself look the best for a specific role or an opportunity that I see come across my inbox, or that I just see on LinkedIn that I want to apply to? How do I do that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I get that question all the time, right? Because with large corporations, whether you're in corporate or government or nursing, right, they see thousands and thousands of resumes a day. And they're constantly, pulling through. One thing I like to really tell potential clients or potential candidates is buzzwords, right? When you're writing your resume, and I've done this myself, I have more than one version of my resume. And that's not just because I'm just, making sure I tailor it to this world or tailor it to that world. I'm tailoring my resume to the job description, right? So I'm looking at a job description, I'm understanding what the ask is, I'm looking at some of the details in the job description, and I'm saying, I've done this, I know I've done this, but how do I put this at the forefront of my resume to get the first call? And I think that's one thing people miss. I mean, people have one version of their resume and they just apply to 50 million jobs at one time without really being thoughtful about the type of role you're looking to be in. And that just goes a long way. So the first thing I will say is buzzwords. Make sure that you're looking at, if this person's looking for example, in the HR space, workforce transformation is a huge thing. Coming into organizations as an HR professional and having the background to say, I want to look at an org, how do I get them to the next level? I'm looking at that in a job description and I'm saying, I know I've done this, but I got to put this into words so that the employer is actually giving me a call back. So that would be the first thing I would say. The second thing I always try to stress to candidates is once you get that phone call, or 9 times out of 10, it's like a 30-minute phone screen, right? That's the first call that you're going to get for an interview. You literally have 30 minutes to sell yourself. You have to tell everything there is to tell about yourself in 30 minutes. I know that's overwhelming, and sometimes I feel like people get intimidated by that quick 30-minute phone screen, but that's usually with the recruiter or the TA. TA is the term that they use now, which is talent acquisition. That's really just getting a feel for who you are, right? So the resume is good. I know this person can do the soft skills or whether it's the hard skills as well, but now let me get a feel for who that individual is. And most times in those 30 minutes, the advice that I would give anyone is talk about the things that are relevant to the job. Sometimes, and I've heard several rules of thought where you go in and you're starting from the bottom of your resume when they say, tell me about yourself, right? You have 30 minutes. So I would tell them about, I have no problem with people starting at the bottom of their resume and working their way up, but how is that relevant to the job today? So just make sure you're pulling out some of those keywords in your job from 10 years ago that's relevant to the job that you're applying to today. So I think for me, the first thing I look for in someone that I'm speaking to in those first 30 minutes is just who you are, why you're interested in the role. I could easily tell from a phone conversation if this is a priority for you. Try to get yourself into a quiet space so that you don't have several different distractions, so that the employer knows that you're taking the role seriously and it's something that you're looking to do.
And you mentioned something very keen. If this job is a priority for them, if I'm on the phone and and you're talking to me, how would you know if I'm a candidate who's not just taking a lot of phone calls this week?
Mhm.
If I'm really solid on taking this job opportunity serious and making this worth your time. How do you know if I'm serious?
One of the things that I think nowadays is so awesome is LinkedIn. You
Mm,
mentioned LinkedIn earlier on when we kicked this off, and LinkedIn, every single company, majority of the companies, let me rephrase that. The majority of the companies that you're applying to have a LinkedIn profile page.
mhm.
They are updating what's going on in the organization day by day, usually within a week, or you'll see an update. When you start off those phone screens, you could start the conversation with saying, hey, I saw the stock went up, or I see you guys are launching
Mm,
X, Y, and Z. I think that's great because that's showing them that you have a pulse on the organization, right? You have an understanding of what it is that they're doing. Some things that I also like to tell people do is go onto the company's website, read the mission statement, understand what they're about. You can always kick a conversation off by saying, hey, I read your mission or your core values of an organization that really aligns with who I am, and this is why I'm interested in the role. So it's small little tidbits that you can say throughout that phone conversation to show somebody that you're vested.
okay. Now let me ask you another question before moving forward. Now I've uh, the put in the resume. I've applied to the job. I saw I saw the job posting. The first day I applied. The first day, is it okay for me to find a hiring manager through LinkedIn, excuse me, and then network with them, even though I haven't heard anything back? Is that okay to reach out in the midst of my application still being considered processing?
Absolutely. I think it's always good because 9 times out of 10, the recruiter or TA person that's assigned to the role is the person that's usually posting, we're hiring, check us out here
Okay.
or apply here. So if you send them a quick note and say, hey, I applied to the role, 9 times out of 10, when you apply to a job, you get something called a rec number or identification number. That's the quickest way for a recruiter to look you up. You can say, listen, I got the automatic email from the job that I applied to. Here's my rec number, or here's my employee ID number that I've signed up with. I'd love to continue the conversation. I'm extremely interested. So that's totally fine. And I think that's the beauty of LinkedIn. You have that direct access.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, as you're speaking, I'm thinking in the back of my head, if I'm the type of person who's just applying to everything, that's probably something that I'm not going to do. I'm not going to reach out to every single TA. I'm
Mhm.
not going to reach out to every single individual who's posting those if I'm applying to 20 jobs at one time, which could definitely put me
Yeah.
at the lower end simply because somebody who really does want that job is probably doing those things. So that's definitely a great point to make. And continuing, I want to say, okay, so let's say, I ace
Mhm.
my 20 to 30-minute phone call. The company is interested in bringing me in. uh, we won't kind of talk about the things that I know you guys already know,
Mhm.
showing up on time and being professionally dressed the right way. What do I do, once from the time I walk in the door, from the time I meet the assistant or the secretary to say, hey, my name is such and such, and I'm here, the clock starts ticking. What should I be doing?
First thing I always tell people is to breathe, right? You're going in on an interview. I know in this world of COVID, a lot of things have likely be in the virtual, or you're doing things, via Zoom or
Hmm.
whatever the case may be. So breathe before you walk into that conversation, because I think you getting through the door within itself is like overwhelming. It's like, okay, one out of a thousand people that have applied to the job, they've asked me to come in.
Definitely,
Another
definitely.
thing that I think is extremely, extremely important is knowing your audience. 9 times out of 10, you're going to get a schedule of who you are going to meet with that day. I'm not telling you to go back and do a ton of research, but think about the people you're meeting with. Am I meeting with the VP of the team? Am I meeting with a direct hiring manager? You know, doing your research on understanding who you're talking to so that you can have target questions. The one thing that I think takes a candidate to the next step for me is people that come in with 3 to 4 questions for me.
Mm,
9 times out of 10, sometimes employers are always wondering, hey, this was great. Anything you have for me? Not saying that it's a bad thing when people say, no, I think you've given me everything that, I've needed throughout this interview process. But as you're in that lobby or you're waiting for that person to come take you to the room where you're going to go interview, think about those questions that you want to have in your back pocket to say, tell me more, because that also shows that you're vested in the organization as well, or you want to just know about the person. Tell me about your history. What made you stay at the company for so long? Help me understand the company's culture. Because a lot of times when you're in the role, it's very different than the interview process. So having those detailed questions about, so what's the day-to-day operationals like here? Help me understand, walk me through a day in a life in your role, because that's what's really going to help you as a candidate understand if it's the right fit for you, because it's just as much about them as it is about you, going into whatever role that you wanted to explore. So just make sure you have some target questions. That's what I do when I'm kind of sitting in the waiting room, waiting to get, for them to take me to the next step. It's tell me, let me think about what am I going to ask this person, because people love to talk about why they either value that organization or why they think you'd be a good fit.
definitely. Now, would you, while I'm waiting, I'm waiting to get back, or I'm sitting in front of the computer at home for a virtual interview, is there anything that I should I should be prepping myself not to do in the midst of waiting?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that I was taught early on in my career is if you're writing, you're not listening. So
Mm,
I know sometimes people think, oh my God, I have to take a bunch of notes. If you're on a virtual interview, eye contact is key, making sure that person knows that you're present and you're here and you're listening to what they have to say. You can always take mental notes, and I'm not saying keep your pen down the entire time. Definitely write down key notes, but I've seen a lot of people sometimes get in front of me and they're so captured into gathering every word that I'm saying. We're missing that eye contact. We're
mm,
missing that personal feel, because not only is it harder virtually to sell who you are, to get that person to know, but you want to make sure that they know you're engaged and you're nodding or you're saying, absolutely, I totally get it. And you can process the questions in your head, or just jot some things down, maybe when at the end of that call, when
mhm.
they're saying, hey, is there anything you want to discuss? Is there anything you want to talk about? That's when you kind of grab your pen and paper. But my biggest thing virtually is eye contact, making sure that that person knows that you're present. And trust me, everyone is at this time working from home. So we get, a barking dog or like kids in the
Yeah,
background. Like a lot of people sometimes get so much anxiety over that. But the employer or the hiring manager, they're human too. So they
definitely.
totally get it. And I don't want people to kind of lose sight of those things, or get so focused on those things where they get overwhelmed and they lose track of the whole point of the interview. Don't worry, they get it. We all understand the COVID kind of thing that we're in right now. Just be yourself. Just be yourself.
That's good. Sometimes we tend to overdo it. We want to make the
Mhm.
best impression. We want to put ourselves at the top of the list, and sometimes we can talk our way out of the job, or not talk our way into the job sometimes. So it's good. And I know we were talking before this
Yeah.
program, and we mentioned the phrase executive presence.
Mhm.
So I want you to kind of and twofold: executive presence being in front of a computer like we are for an
Mhm.
interview, and then actually being face to face. What is executive presence? How do I actually take that phrase, excuse me, and turn it into my mannerisms, turn it into my diction, turn it into everything that could be put forth within the interview?
Absolutely. And I think that goes back to me stating a little bit earlier about knowing your audience, right?
Mhm.
Executive presence is thrown around so much, no matter what industry you're in, whether it's entertainment and media or commercial real estate and financial services. You hear this term all the time, executive presence. How do I have executive presence? And to me, what that really means is when you're sitting across from an executive, or if you're sitting across from someone that's in a position to hire you or make the hiring
Mhm.
decision, is making sure that those target questions that I mentioned are tailored to the individual, right? So if you're talking to a CEO, for instance, the question you're not going to ask is, how many snacks are in radius to my desk, right? Although that might be something that some
Exactly.
industries care about. And look, I work in the tech space, and sometimes offices are set up in a way where they're fun, they're innovative,
Mhm.
and they have snacks everywhere. But is that the question that you ask the CEO of the organization? Not really, right? Although it might
Exactly.
be important, it might contribute to the culture of that organization. I don't think that that's the right question that you would ask. So just making sure that 9 times out of 10, if you're on the phone with someone that is of an executive presence level or someone that's making decisions, your one interview over probably 4 or 5 that they're probably going to meet that day. Think about memorable things. What is going to make this person remember me? Or what is it that I know about the person that I'm talking about to spark up a conversation? The human side of you is what's going to shine through. So just making sure,
Definitely.
like you said, don't talk yourself out of the role. Make sure you're talking to the person and helping them understand that, hey, I saw you went to NJIT. I have a nephew that goes to that school. Do you know such and such, right? It's little tidbits that's on your resume or that you may notice from that person's LinkedIn that are important. And that's how you spark that conversation and say, oh, I remember Katrina. She was the one that went to Ramapo College. I sent my
Mm.
daughter. Those are small things that say, because your resume is already going to show that you can do the job, but what's going to click between you and that person that you're interviewing with to say, I'm going to remember him or her, and to continue them throughout that process.
Definitely, and it's good to add that personal touch. A lot of the
Mhm.
conversation may be very technical, maybe very specific to the role,
Yep.
but just kind of taking a step back and saying, I know you, or I know of you, or I know something that has something to do with you, can
Yep.
kind of bring that, that common touch that we hear so much about. So that's good. And I wanted to kind of talk about, a lot of employers, a lot of TAs, a lot of HR professionals, they may ask this question, why should I hire you?
Hmm.
I've seen a lot of resumes. I'll be honest with you. I'm doing a few different interviews, and you're one of, maybe 5 or 6. Why should I hire you?
Hmm.
What
That
would you
comes out
What would you expect to
a
hear? I
lot.
should say.
So if I'm asking someone why I should hire you, it's that unique identifier, right?
Mhm.
It's I looked at the job description that you posted, and I'm actually working on that type of stuff right now. Like I'm
Mhm.
in it right now. I get, another thing that I tend to look for is sometimes people tell me what they've done, but they don't walk me through the journey of how they solved it, right?
Mm.
Sometimes people get on the phone with me and they'll say, Katrina, I worked on, yes, I can do workforce transformation, but are you providing me with any examples of how you got from start to finish?
Mhm.
I like to hear about things that didn't work. Right. So tell me, look, I tried it this way. I had to go back to someone else. We had to, come together as a group and project manage whatever the case may be, is walking your potential employer or the person that you're interviewing with through the journey of how you got to where you are, is always helpful. Tell me what you're passionate about. Tell me why. I've been in HR for 10 years. And the first thing that I can say, if anybody is ever interviewing me, is why should I hire you? It's I love people development. I love to see people from start to finish, get to their career goals, and making sure that that person is set up for success. So just constantly sharing with them the journey, not just about, look, I need the job. And trust me, compensation is important, benefits are important. Those are all things you'll talk about kind of
Mhm.
down the road. But why is this particular industry or this particular role something that you're passionate about? And if you display that passion against the role, then I think that's just a check next to your name 100% of the time.
Definitely, and it's funny you mentioned that because I remember, my early days of interviewing. Sometimes they would ask me, why do you want this job? Not necessarily why should we hire you, but why are you interested in us? And, sometimes it was a job with um, free healthcare. And
Mhm.
I mentioned that, yeah, free healthcare is great. And as I got older, and I realized, why would somebody hire me? Because you know what I'm saying? So
Of
it's
course.
good. And and I definitely see the faults in my ways early on in my career, as opposed to now. Just with the growth of listening to conversations like we're having now, and listening to individuals who are in the field tell me, look, you need to do this and not this. So this is good. And I wanted to follow up, of course, with
Yeah.
another question. We get those kind of situational questions sometimes in interviews. It's like, tell me about a time where you had to
Mhm.
disagree with a colleague, and how did you overcome it? So my question to you from that statement is basically not how to question that. I mean, excuse me, not how to answer that, but what exactly is an employer trying to figure out by asking me a question like such?
Absolutely. I think the first thing that they're trying to see is if you're quick on your feet.
Hmm.
Can you really think about, and most times I've done it myself too. We over engineer that question.
Definitely.
Most times it's an example of something that you were working on, the other day. So for example, hey, look, somebody, reached out to me. They had a disagreement with an employee, and I had to sit across the table, and I mediated that situation. It could be as simple as that, but our brains go, oh my gosh, we have to think of a really big
Yep.
or drawn out story that we need to tell. It's
Exactly.
probably, and most of the time, it's something that you just did the other day at work that you can just give them an example about. And I think it's really just most employers really want to understand, could this person work in a fast paced environment? Can this person take a step back and think on their feet and say, I need to get this done now, or how do I get this to the finish line? Another thing is, how do they interact with others? Right?
Mhm.
How are you partnering? What's your teamwork, or what does teamwork mean to you? Are you more of an individual contributor? Maybe the role that I need to put you in is not quite this one, but it's more of you just working solo. It's little things that they're trying to grab from that conversation. Because another thing that we also tend to forget when we're interviewing for a job, if it may not be that role, things you say may spark something else in that interview
Mm,
to say, you know what, she might not be the fit for this, but I have this other role that I think she'd be awesome for. I can't tell you how many times I've interviewed someone and I thought about it and I said, I didn't think this person was a fit, but I definitely gave them a call for something else. So
wow.
just why I always say, just be yourself, talk about what's relevant for you and what's relevant to the role, because you never know. A lot of TA people tend to keep potential candidates in this pipeline, right? It's this repository of resumes that they say, look, I know that this job wasn't it for them, but I do know I have a pulse to the business to know that something's coming in January of next year that this person might be good with. And that's just a broad example, but it definitely does happen.
Awesome. And then, so I want to give you a quick scenario.
Mhm.
I'm coming. I found a job that I got pulled in for an interview, engineering job. I hear you talk about, you know, it's one thing to say you've done it, but it's another thing to actually show the process. So I have a great portfolio. Is it okay to bring that in and pull that out during the interview, or is it something that I should, keep stowed away and just say, hey, I have it, just in case you would like to see it, or not bring it at all? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's hit or miss. That's something that you can grab from, gauge from that interviewer, the
Mhm.
person that's talking to you. I have no problem with looking at portfolios. I love it. I love to understand what work you've done, what space you've been in. Sometimes one thing that I've noticed a little bit more recently than before is a lot of my hiring managers are sending candidates home with homework. Right?
Wow.
Solve
Okay.
this problem. Hey, and maybe that's, because I'm in the tech space, but they're giving them things to solve and they're bringing it back so that they can whiteboard, is what we call it, during that interview process.
Right.
During Zoom, we're having a whiteboard session where you're showing me how you solve problems in the engineering space or in the infrastructure space, whatever the case may be. And I love that, because then the pressure's off a little bit. It's like, all right, let me get into my zone and do my thing. And then there's other parts of it where you can come back and kind of showcase your work, and everyone loves to showcase their work, which I
Definitely.
love.
Awesome. Okay. So, okay, we talked about two different aspects. We talked about the pre-interview. We
Mhm.
talked about the post-interview. Okay, I just left the interview. I feel great about it. I think the interviewers, they really like me. They really enjoyed the conversation. Boom. What are my next steps? Should I be sending an email? Should I be calling? Should I just leave it alone and wait to hear? What would you like to see from a client?
People have lost the follow-up email. I am a huge fan of the follow-up email. And that's really just sending an email out to the employer saying, thank you for your time. The one thing that I think is going to shine in any interview process is making sure that you say something that's relevant to the conversation you just had. So for example, sometimes people say, oh, hey, it was really, really nice to meet you. And I really enjoyed our conversation. You know, UMES or whatever college that you went to, I really go put the colors in the email, right? Something that makes it personal, right? Another thing that I think people also do in that interview follow-up email is address the person. So before you hang up the call with the person, hey, I just wanted to make sure that I had your correct email address. Repeat the email address over to them just so that they have an idea that something is coming. You never want to hang up the phone and say, crap, I meant to ask that person what their email address was so that I can say, thank you for even taking the time to speak with me. So first thing I would say is make sure you have the right email address. Second thing I would say is short, sweet. When you're sending a thank you email, I would limit that to about maybe 2 or 3 sentences because like I said, people likely don't have the time to read a drawn out email, but you do want them to know or have something in their inbox to say that you're interested. So definitely short and sweet, and make sure that you put something in there that's saying a remembrance of that conversation or that's relevant to that conversation.
Yeah, and guys, I'll give you another tidbit from experience too. I went to an interview. I felt it was great. I sent a thank you. However, I sent the email from my phone. And your phone will change words on you.
Oh yeah.
On the drop of a dime. So I sent it, and then I actually reread it after I sent it, and I just shook my head. I said, I'm not going to get this job. It was so grammatically incorrect. Just from me typing and just using my thumbs to send a message. So I say all that to say, guys, please proofread it.
Yes, proofread it. Don't just press send.
Don't just press send. It'll make all the difference. I promise you. Trust me. And I did not get that job at all. And I actually, when they responded to when I saw my errors, I actually sent it again. And then I kind of got that response that was like, thank you anyway. Good try. Try it again next time. So scholars, please make sure you proofread that. Thank you. So I wanted to add another dynamic to this conversation, Katrina. Boom, you hired me. I'm good to go. I got everything I need. I'm ready to start. I may not have my orientation the first day, or let's just say I already have my orientation and boom, it's my first day. For a new hire, on my first day, we'll limit it to the first day, nothing more, nothing less. What should I be doing on the first day? I probably won't jump right in. It'll probably be, me just engaging with folks, trying to learn, trying to just get the lay of the land. What should a new hire do, on their first day? Not to really impress, but just, make individuals feel that this was a good hire from the first day.
Absolutely. I think I'll take that a step further. When I think about onboarding, it is not your first week. It is not your first 2 weeks. It is the first 90 days that you are in a role. To me, that's onboarding, right? Take your time to understand the lay of the land. A lot of times things are moving very fast. You're jumping into something that's probably already started. 9 times out of 10. Take your time and understand the lay of the land. Do meet and greets. One thing I will say on your first day is understand your immediate team. So whether that's your hiring manager and your peers, I think that's the first step, and say, hey, how are you? I'm so excited to be here. Nice to meet you. They've also seen your portfolio. I'm sure a new hire announcement has gone out, so they're anticipating your arrival. Just make sure that you're letting people know that you're there to support, you're there to help, and you're there to kind of kick things off. But just give yourself that time, because I'm telling you, the work is there. That's why they hired you. But enjoy the onboarding experience. And I mean that from understanding who your peers are, spending 30 minutes with them, and then also understanding where your support's coming from. So when you're in a role, most of the time you have, I like to call it a center of excellence, right? So this is the person that handles this over here. I'm likely gonna need them for something, or this is someone that I'm probably gonna have to interact with on my day-to-day. Might not be now, but I know that my name's gonna probably come across their desk. How about I do a meet and greet with them as well? So just get the lay of the land, understand a little bit about the culture, the company, and that's so hard to do virtually. I'll tell you, I'm someone that started a job virtually. I completely started a new role in the middle of the pandemic, and it is very hard to be on all the time, right? Because you're meeting people virtually. So enjoy that onboarding process, because I'm telling you, after 3 months, you're a part of the org. You're doing everything full speed and you're into your role. So take the time to get to know people.
Definitely, and I share that experience with you, Katrina. I started this role in March. My first day, I
Wow.
flew to LA, and then I came back. That was a Monday. I came back on a Thursday, and then Friday, office is closed. Boom, go home. So I've not been in my office for a full 8 hours, and I've been there
Oh
since
my
March.
goodness.
So yeah,
So
I'm
I
still.
started virtual. I've never met my manager in person. I've never met anyone in my
Mhm.
team in person, but I don't feel like that. And I think that that's because most organizations are in the same scramble, right?
Right,
They didn't
right.
would have predicted this would have happened. They're really being good to each other and being good
Mhm.
to themselves in the midst of this pandemic. The flexibility with most organizations is absolutely there. They understand that your office is now splat dab in the middle of your living room. So they get it. And I think that it's been a really, really welcoming experience for me.
Definitely. It's I tell myself, whenever we do get back in the office, it'll be my first day. Everything's been virtual. I've been meeting with colleagues virtually. It took me a while to even get a phone number, so it's definitely been a new and trying experience. But I
Mhm.
definitely it definitely shows how much before the pandemic that we kind of took for granted, and how much
Mhm.
we expected certain things. So it's definitely been a wake up call, but I like it. It's new. It keeps you on your feet, and it just help. It's a definitely a helper, I should say. As you move through your profession and through your career. So it's good.
And I
It's
think
good. I
I
appreciate
think
it.
you said something that also triggered something for me to share as well. It's given the pandemic, a lot of people are scared to make a move right now. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't want to look for a job just yet. I want to see how things shake out. That's what goes back to me sharing with you, to just being intentional about the jobs that you're applying to, especially in the midst of a pandemic. It's simply because if you are going to make a move right now in the midst of everything that's going on in society, you want to really be thoughtful about the role that you're going into. Is this something that I can see myself doing 5 to 10 years from now? Do I want to leave a job that I've been working for 10 years and I have the reputation and the stability there? It's a lot of factors that go into it. It's just making sure that you are intentional about your approach to the job market. Things are picking back up. I will tell you, I have LinkedIn up on the side of my screen because I'm always constantly sourcing. It's out there. Roles are out there. They're posting. People are getting back into a hiring groove, is what I like to call it. So just be intentional and be thoughtful about the roles you're applying to.
Good. And I wanna ask you one more question before I
Sure,
kind
yeah.
of turn it over to you and let you kind of lay it out there. So for individuals, so a lot of students have been virtual.
Mhm.
And with that said, they lost certain opportunities for internships, and lost the ability to engage in certain things that they could have pre-COVID. So my question to you is, how do I've applied to a job. I'm leaving undergrad. I want to work. How do I, talk about my experiences? Talk about, the things that I can bring to a company, even though, some of the experience that I wanted were cut short, and some of the experience that I
Mhm.
may have needed for the role, I wasn't able to get because of the lack of being in person in certain scenarios. So,
Yeah.
so if you're sitting in front of a candidate with that scenario, how would you expect them to kind of talk about themselves and let them know that they are interested in the job without having those, certain experiences?
Absolutely, I know. And sometimes one thing I could think about is I've worked in like media and entertainment. A lot of the media and entertainment, my past industries, a lot of that work was hands-on, right? Being in the building, understanding
Definitely.
the lay of the land, and that speaks volumes, right? But I also think because other employers are in the same situation where they understand the last year, oh my gosh, I can't believe it's going to be a year in March. The last year
Definitely.
has been people flexing, right? So talk about the virtual experience that you have had. Listen, I've whiteboarded with this individual and we worked on this project. I was able to see something to the finish line, or we launched this. There's a lot of things which I also think people tend to forget. When you're working in larger organizations, 9 times out of 10, you're talking to someone in LA, you're working with someone in New York, you're working with someone in London. So you've already been in that position where you're driving value through the computer, right? You've already drove value through the computer. So it's not as different as people tend to think when you're working virtually to say, oh my gosh, I haven't had that experience. You have, because most of the time we're living and breathing email. So making sure that you're talking through the things that you've solved via email, or the things that you're engaging in virtually, all of that is still going to be relevant experience, because the global pandemic is happening to everybody. So don't discredit yourself.
Awesome. That's good to know. A lot of individuals may feel as though, they're kind of left away, or kind of just left to survive on their own because of it. So that's good to know. Definitely that, you can still be who you wanted to be, even though the circumstances may have changed for you. So awesome. Thank you for that. So I want to throw the ball to you. Katrina's best practices. You've been in the game, been in this HR game for a little while now. You've seen a lot of things, done a lot of things. So what are your best practices, for those individuals who are looking for jobs, who are even trying to prepare for interviews, which is just what are your best practices?
Yeah, absolutely. I think thinking about my career, and I've grown with my career along the way. One thing that I will say is be yourself. Everything else is going to follow. Your work will speak for itself. One thing that a leader told me, or actually a mentor told me, is if you do the work, the money will come. Right. Sometimes people get so hung up on it's not the right dollar amount, or it's not the right business. If it's an organization or a company that you're passionate about and you want to be in, the money will come. All that stuff will come as if you put your best foot forward and you're an advocate for yourself. No matter what level, I mean, junior level, mid-level, senior level, whatever level you're making those transitions in your career to start to say you're applying for a job. One thing I always tell people to sit back and think about: if you're applying for a job, or if you're looking to transition, there's a reason why. Keep those reasons why in the forefront of your mind. If you're looking to say that this is not the company that I know, I want to explore my options, and I don't want to be at this organization anymore, I want to explore this. What are the reasons behind that? And make sure that you're targeting those types of questions in the interview. Tell me what your culture is like. Tell me a little bit about your management style. People don't always just leave jobs because they're ready for, or they don't like the job that they're in. They might be ready for the next step. Help me a little bit, understand what the career path looks like in that organization. So the second thing I will always just reiterate is just understand your reasonings why for wanting to be out in the job market. 2, be good to yourself, because it's a tough market. Everyone thinks that, oh my gosh, I applied to this job 2 weeks ago and I haven't heard from them. Don't be so hard on yourself. Think about the intentions behind why you're looking for a role, because all that stuff will come. Sometimes I think we just put too much pressure on ourselves to be perfect. No one is perfect when you're coming across the screen, whether it's virtually or in person. Truly just remember that the reason that you're applying for this job is because it's a company that you want to be a part of. So sometimes I talk like I'm a part of the organization already, right? I'm already coming across with just key tidbits about the role that have sparked my interest. And then the last thing I will say, and just kind of goes back to something that I said before, is once you're getting the interview, once you're sitting in front of that person, talk about things that are relevant to the role. A lot of times people have, scarce experience, whether they're switching industries. If you're applying to a role that's in engineering, talk about your engineering background, because that's what they want to hear. They want to hear about that versus just your years of experience within a role. They have your resume. We've likely digested your resume before we gave you a call. So just make sure that you're coming across your natural self.
Okay. And I know we talked about this pre video, I should say. So I'm going to ask, and you can elaborate, or keep it short and sweet if you want. Perfectly fine. Should I negotiate my salary?
I hear this question all the time, and it's something that comes up all the time. You know your worth, right?
Yeah.
And I say that all the time, but I'm also going to say study the market. It's so much information out there about salaries for certain levels of roles, certain years of experience. Sometimes people talk to me and they really think it's apples to apples when we're talking through a salary or an offer that we're going to give someone. There's so many determining factors when it comes down to salary. And sometimes people will say to me, well, I know my worth. Know your worth and know the market, right? Know the industry that you're applying to. Understand the location of that industry that you're applying to. New York is going to be a totally different market than Tennessee, right? Think about that when you're applying to jobs and when you're negotiating your salary. But the short answer to it is absolutely. If you're educated enough to know, listen, I saw other roles or I've applied to other jobs and they've offered me X, and this is the same role with the same level of experience. So this is what I think I know that I should be worth. Talk about it, have the conversation. People do it all the time. And I think people steer away from that type of conversation in fear of saying, oh my God, if I say this now, they're probably going to backtrack on the offer. No, never feel like that. If you've been well read enough to know what the market is offering for that level and that type of role, and also what you bring to the table. So by all means, if you feel comfortable enough doing it, by all means, I say have the conversation.
Awesome. And I think, and a lot of the conversation that we've had today is kind of backtracked and kind of came full focus, I should say, as it relates to knowing your worth, understanding yourself, and being yourself. Those are key points along this whole process amongst everything that we've talked about. Is just knowing who you are. Don't doubt yourself. Be who you are, and everything will fall into place. Am I correct in saying that?
You are 100% correct in saying that. And breathe throughout this process. Be good to yourself as you're applying to roles, only because it's your future, right? Whether it's a job that your dream job that you're looking for, or if you're just getting started because you want to get your feet wet in the industry. It's a journey. It's I like to say it's a marathon. It's not a race. So as you're going into the interview process, be intentional, be thoughtful with your words. Always make sure that the follow-up is important, because sometimes people are talking to 30 candidates a week. So if there isn't some sort of identifier to say, yes, Katrina Hicks was interested in this role, and I remember her because of X, just constantly just keep that at the forefront of your mind, and you'll be just fine. You'll be just fine.
Awesome. Katrina, thank you so much for your time. This has been extraordinary. I know our scholars that are tuning in, they really took a lot of tidbits, took a lot of nuggets, took a lot of great things from this experience. So I truly appreciate your time on this Monday morning.
Absolutely. And look, best of luck. It's a busy industry out there. There's tons of roles out there. Just remember to always come across and just be yourself.
Awesome. So scholars, thank you for tuning in. This is once again video 9. Happy you guys have been with us thus far, and I look forward to more to come. So until the next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.